Whew, let everybody see you, okay? I don't know that they can see you. Can they see you right there? Yeah, I think they can see you. Okay, all right, so you be a good girl, okay? Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I do on Sundays. You can ask garden questions down below and I will answer those in next week's video. I am traveling next week. I'm guessing I'll be able to get this video done before I go, but there's some possibility there won't be a question and answer video next week. I don't know. I think that by the time you see this, I'll have the first of the 2 videos from Dr. Durr up. The first one, about the first 10, 12 minutes, has kind of bad audio. I apologize again for that. I still wanted to put the video up. Man knows more and, you know, one pinky about horticulture than I do in both hands. I mean, you know, just is an encyclopedia of plants, and I hope to get back down there and do some additional videos with him. The second video is at his plant development business, and the audio is much better. So you'll learn some things over there as well. His hydrangea book is super interesting because I get questions all the time, not promoting someone's material. I don't make anything off promoting anything, so I try not to promote anything on this channel. So before I say this, let me just say, I need to say that, but his hydrangea book is super interesting. He gave me a copy of it, and it does have a lot of the process of how they go through and do seedlings, seed crosses in hydrangeas, a lot about plant breeding. I get a lot of questions about going into more detail about plant breeding. It's in his new hydrangea book, so you may want to look that up. We talk about it at the beginning of that video. You can get it on Amazon. Again, not making anything on it. Let's see. What else? This week, I've got all my bulbs in from Color Blends, and they cold treated them for me. In the past, I've had them in my refrigerator, and I do have a few bulbs in my refrigerator, but this year I had Color Blends do it. You guys will get bored of bulb information very soon. I have a lot of bulbs. I mean, a lot of bulbs, a couple thousand for sure, to put in here, and I've got to get all that done this week as well. So lots coming up. Let's get started on last week's questions. Again, ask questions down below. If there's not a video next Sunday, there will be the following Sunday. Somebody asked me, they had moved some hellebores, and then they had some cyclamens in the same area, and then when they moved the hellebores, the cyclamen went crazy, and they just wanted to know, why. Well, several things. One is the area could have been too crowded, at which point, when the cyclamen had more room, they filled in. Number 2, you broke the soil up some, and so it may have been kind of compacted in that area. And so when you pulled out the hellebores, they rooted into that area, or thirdly, it was just that time. They had been in the ground for a certain number of years, and they reached that point where they just went and kind of took off pretty quickly. So lots of reasons that could be. But yeah, frequently, plants need to be thinned. You'll hear a lot of these experts, that I have on my channel and me say the same thing. I plant it really super thick. It's okay to come back and remove things later. And sometimes when you go back later and remove those the plants that are too thick, it does give space, air, light, rooting space, all of those kinds of things to your other plants to just go and fill it right back in. Okay, somebody asked me, they said they're looking for a centerpiece plant. They're in Raleigh here where I am, and want some sort of a large evergreen tree. And they were thinking like a little gem magnolia or an Arizona cypress. If you can find teddy bear magnolia, I actually really like that plant more than little gem. Has a much better coloration on the back of the leaf. Can be a little more difficult to find. It's a little more pricey because it is a patented variety. It may be off patent. It's probably still patented. Anyway, it's a little bit more. It's got a cute little bear tag on it, so you'll see it. And if you compare the back of the leaf, teddy bear has a much richer brown back on the leaf than little gem does. Either one of those trees will work. But when I hear the word centerpiece, I would not put a big giant evergreen tree in the middle of your front yard. If you do use a kind of a statement piece like that, I would have it to be, left or right, and not, right in the center. It's really, really difficult to landscape when you put a large evergreen item right in the middle of your landscape. And The video that I put up, the third part of the landscape rehab video that I put up week before last, I cut down a ligustrum that was in the middle of that backyard in that video. And I did that because it was just a big giant evergreen thing, and you couldn't see around it in any direction. It didn't do the creating rooms thing that we kind of like. It just was just a big obnoxious thing in the middle. So, you know, be careful putting just a giant Christmas tree looking thing right in the center. I'd move it to one side or the other. Okay, somebody has their crabgrass took over their vegetable garden this year. Wanted to know if they could should put down black plastic on the ground to prevent it from happening again, you know, like this winter. Crabgrass germinates at a very specific soil temperature. So like at 60, 65 degrees is when crabgrass germinates. So usually for me in my area here in Raleigh, it's around March 15th. That's how we know that's how lawn care guys know when to put out pre-emergent herbicide, is to get it right before the temperature reaches the temperature where crabgrass germinates. It's all, again, most of these things are science. So you're not going to get crabgrass germinating through the winter. You will get chickweed and henbit and some other things. But if you wanted to potentially stop some of that crabgrass, you would cover it for that month before you put your vegetables in the ground, from about March 15th to about April 15th. You could prevent some of it then, but I have a feeling when you uncover it, it's not like you killed the seeds, you know, that's still going to germinate. I think the best thing to do is, make sure, if you're adding compost to your garden each year, my soil over there, because I'm adding compost each time, it's kind of super fluffy, and that little shuffle hoe that I've shown many times, that thing just works fantastic for going through and breaking off that crabgrass at the ground or slightly under, and takes care of it really, really quickly. So if you're taking care of your soil is welcoming to weeds, but also super easy to get the weeds out. But anyway, it won't do you any good to cover it in black plastic through the winter, nor do I like to recommend anybody ever put plastic on the ground, period. Holly, no ma'am. Not going in the building. Okay, let's see. Somebody's got some butterfly weed that they did from seed this past year, and it's still under the grow light in the house, I guess, and they never took it outside and put it in the ground. Wanted to know if they should just keep it under the grow light for the winter. It's going to actually need winter. It actually needs to go dormant, so I would put it in a container, and then you can put it outside on cool days. Don't let the pot freeze solid, so you can bring the pot in and out. But you do need to let it get chilled down and cooled off, and get a little bit of winter on it. So keep that in mind. I think it would actually decline if you left it inside the whole winter without getting any cold on it at all. Okay, it's cold out here. You don't see me in a coat very often. Let's see. Somebody wanted to know if they should mulch their container plants. I don't. You could. One thing though is, I've got pansies and I've got, ornamental cabbages and kales and all kinds of things in all these containers back here. I do worry if I mulch them or put any place in there like leaves or anything in there that gives a place for slugs to hide and other critters to hide. I don't want that. And so whatever potting soil mix that I'm using, and it's this past year been compost and pine bark in all my containers, that's what's on top. So no, I don't mulch them. Again, I just don't want a hiding place for, bad guys potentially. Let's see. Oh, and then somebody asked, does soil in your containers run out of nutrients? Yes, absolutely. There's no rock, dust. Nutrients, are elements, and they're in rock. Dust, it's in our soil. It's in our soils, and roots and fungi and bacteria, and other things make those nutrients available to our plants. That's how things grow in the ground without ever really having to have fertilizer. They may not thrive, but they don't die, because there are plenty of nutrients because there's rock dust in the ground. No rock dust in those containers. And so Yeah, absolutely. And frequently when the potting soil has no nutrients, period, to start with. I mean, it just doesn't have anything. And so you need to, it's best to replace some of that soil occasionally. And so replanting, pulling a plant out of the container, knocking some of the soil off of it, knocking some of the roots, getting the roots to be less, circling around anyway is a good call. Cut the roots a little bit and add a little bit of fresh soil to it is a good idea. But then again, I mean, fertilizer, you have to fertilize your container plants. Really, if you're using non-soil, you're not using soil in them, or you're not using anything with rock dust in them, so you need to fertilize them. And that's the main thing. But yes, I replace some of it occasionally, regardless. Okay, let's see. Somebody had their roof replaced, and they got little bits of shingle all over the place, wanted to know if it would hurt the plants. No, it wouldn't hurt the plants. I mean, I wouldn't want to grow my vegetables in it. And I wish all those roofing companies would do a better job of cleaning up. I mean, most of there's some good quality companies out there, but some of them will leave a big, huge mess. But get up the biggest pieces that you can. I don't think it'll hurt your other plants. I probably wouldn't want to grow my food in it. But I don't think it's a big issue. There's probably, I don't know if there's any kind of warning on those packs of shingles that are not. I mean, most things we buy like that last a long time have some sort of cancer warning on them. I have no idea if shingles do or not. Just again, as long as it's not a place you're eating the food, just get up the biggest pieces, mulch over it. Literally every house in America probably has little shavings of shingles around them if the roof's ever been replaced. Okay. Somebody wanted to put bulbs in containers in zone 5. Wanted to know what to plant them in. So I would say any kind of compost and bark mix that you can, or potting soil, whatever you want to plant them in, really. I think your biggest issue is in zone 5B. Like, I could put my tulip bulbs in containers here in zone 7 and just put them outside. I have to put some sort of cover on top of them to keep squirrels from digging them out of the containers. But I could put them outside once the bulbs start to emerge in the spring, take off whatever wire mesh or whatever I've got laying on top of them. In zone 5, those bulbs actually might get too frozen. So keep that in mind. You probably would be better off in a non-heated room, so in a shed or something like that. And then, on moderate, when the temperatures moderate, put them outside in the sunlight. Okay, I think they've asked a question a couple times and I had not gotten to it. They have some sap on the bottom of their cherry tree, down near the base. They have some sap leaking and had read that it could be borers. Borers are pretty easy to identify because there's some sawdust at that, somewhere around that area of the sap. You should see some sawdust because the borers literally kind of saw tunnels into the tree. So if you're not seeing the sawdust, it's something else. It could be some sort of fungal, it could be some sort of, I'm not even going to think of this word. It could be a disease issue. It could also be some sort of freeze-thaw issue that happened last winter. If you go to pretty much any kind of fruit tree, you're going to see down near the base, you're going to see areas where sap are on them. Almost all of them do this. Sometimes it means nothing, and sometimes it means something like borers or something something that could be devastating to the tree. If the tree is still reasonably healthy, I doubt it's problematic. Over the long haul. But check and see if you see the sawdust. If you see the sawdust, then it's borers, yes, and you can go about whatever treatment somebody recommends there in your area. You can call your extension agent in your county, and maybe it's something they're seeing in your area too. You might learn something that would be helpful just in general. Growing fruit trees in whatever county you're in. I don't know where this person was. But anyway, sawdust. That's easy answer there, right? Look for the sawdust. Okay, somebody bought a lot of random plants and wanted to know how to make kind of a random plant purchases work in design. And I have the same thing here. You guys know that. I mean, I have one of a lot of different things. But I do have 3 and 5s of a lot of different things. Okay, so that's the way I go about it, is that pick a few things that you do like or smaller things that you really like and carry those around in your design. So it looks like you had some sort of, plan. So I'll use, it doesn't even have to be the same exact plant. It could be, like if I look at the three sides of this, or this oval piece of grass that I'm sitting on, I've got some Everillo Carex, which is gold, over there. It's only about this tall. And I've got this, the St. John's wort, the gold St. John's wort behind me, that little gold patch right there. And I've got a gold patch of sedum over here on this side. So even though they're not necessarily the same plant, it is a low gold piece. And so I carry some of the same things around. And it helps to congeal or bring together the fact that I have one of literally everything else in the world. So pick a few things you like and go heavy on them. And I think that helps to bring it all together. Okay, let's see. Somebody wanted to know if I was going to do videos on managing rain on my property. This is another video I'm shooting this week. I'm super, super excited. I ran across these folks that were doing a rain garden at a neighbor's house months and months and months ago. And we've communicated for a long time. And this week, finally, I am actually shooting a video of a rain garden being made here in Raleigh, North Carolina, with a lot of explanation of why it's important for the city to, encourage people to put in rain gardens and that kind of thing. You'll see that video coming up. I'm really excited about that one. Let's see. Somebody wanted to know when they should remove water sprout suckers on their apples and pears. Anytime when they're dormant, completely dormant. So anytime during the winter time, maybe January or February when they're completely dormant. Water sprouts are those little vertical shoots. It's like the trees picking a new leader. You'll see it on really stressed trees that they'll get new, like 25 to 100 sometimes of perfectly vertical shoots along the stems and branches on the tree. Those are called water sprouts, and they, again, they can be removed anytime during the winter. Keep in mind, it's usually a stress indicator. So, the tree is stressed in some way. Usually, if it's trying to pick a new leader, that's usually what it is. I got another question about using coffee grounds just in the garden, and they read how beneficial they were and blah 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 blah. Anything that you dump into your landscape, whether it's, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, wood ash or anything, eggshells, I don't care what it is, just dump it in different places. I doubt it has the 14 benefits that the blogger wrote about. How your coffee grounds were going to change your gardening life. Whatever the article was. But there are nutrients in it for sure, and they won't hurt your plants unless you just keep dumping them in the same spot. So if you want to put your coffee grounds in your garden, perfectly fine. Just pick a new spot, as you move across the area. Okay. Let's see. Oh, then somebody asked me about planting bulb time, and I already answered that. This week I'm going to be planting all my bulbs that have been cold treated at this point. Any bulbs you got at this point, they should be going in the ground. For sure, unless they're tropical bulbs like amaryllis, which will go in the house. I'll show you. I've got some amaryllis for inside. Okay, somebody cut down a sassafras tree, and now there's root suckers all over the place. Trees trying to come back to life from all the roots that are under the ground. Husband's been spraying the suckers with Roundup, wants to know if it'll hurt the other shrubs around them. As long as you're getting the Roundup directly on the suckers and not spraying onto the plants. No, it won't. It won't go through the soil and up into other plants. That's one thing that's uniquely good, if there's anything good about Roundup, is that it really works through the shutting. It's a salt derivative that kind of shuts down the growth by spraying it directly on the leaf, and it basically just starves the plant of being able to grow any longer or anything, and that's how it kills it. So you won't hurt it. You won't hurt your other plants with the Roundup unless there's some overspray, or it gets directly on it. I don't use any glyphosate. Glyphosate is the chemical name for Roundup. Roundup came off patent years ago, and now you can just buy it as glyphosate. You don't have to buy it as Roundup anymore. I don't use it. I will say that. Now, I'm not going to say anything about. I'm not going to say anything good, bad, or ugly about Roundup on this channel because I'll have a lot of blowback. I personally just don't use it. I think again, you can just take. By the time you went and filled the sprayer in your shed, you could take that little skinny trenching shovel I have and boom, 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 cut every one of those suckers and be back in the house, you know, watching the football game in about 8 minutes. You know, that's my thinking on something like that. Those suckers are just super easy to cut off. Just keep starving those roots and it'll go away. Don't need a chemical to do it, really. I answered a couple camellia questions last week about some blooming. They wanted to know if their budded up camellias would still bloom, and I talked about some blooming early and some blooming late. They still wanted to know is if after they had a hard freeze, would they still open? Yes, camellia buds are amazingly cold tolerant, and so as soon as the temperature moderates, you'll see the flowers start to reopen again. This cold will just slow them from opening for a little while. But I've had camellia sasanquas bloom into January and February before because it got cold in October, November, and December, and then kind of moderated after the first of the year. And so those buds are super, super cold hardy. So any of them, if they were partially open and you got a 25-degree night or 26-degree night, those buds will be killed. But all the ones that are still tight definitely will still open. The first moderate temperature week we have. A couple more here. Somebody's got some. They have a banana shrub, which is an evergreen shrub. Gets these really amazingly scented flowers on them. Has some yellow leaves on it, and they were concerned whether they were overwatering it or not. I've talked about this many times. If the yellowing is kind of on the exterior of the plant, typically that means you're overwatering it or there's some sort of nutrient deficiency. If you're overwatering a plant, that yellowing is a nutrient deficiency because basically when you're rotting the roots are no longer able to bring those nutrients up into the top of the plant. So what you're seeing is some sort of potassium, phosphorus, iron, some sort of deficiency in the top of that plant created by root damage that was caused by overwatering it. If you're seeing the yellowing on the interior of the plant, typically that's some sort of shedding related to underwatering or conifers this time of year. I talked about last week, shed in the interior this time of year anyway. But my only concerning discoloration in a plant is always in that new growth because that's showing you some sort of indication of a nutrient deficiency. And generally speaking, it's caused by some sort of root damage. And usually it's humans loving plants to death by overwatering them or planting them in too deep or over mulching them or planting them in swampy areas, whatever. Okay. Last question this week. Somebody asked me, do they need to cold treat daffodil bulbs? Only people in like South Florida or California would need to cold treat daffodil bulbs, or like maybe Arizona or South Texas. Daffodils, of all the main spring flowering bulbs that most people plant, daffodils need the least amount of cold treatment. So even in zone 8B, you're totally fine, probably even into 9A. And there's some daffodils that have been, there are southern mixes of daffodils that have been bred to even require less cold treatment. But for the most part, nobody needs to cold treat daffodil bulbs. They're come back for almost everybody watching this video right now, except for maybe Orlando and south in Florida, and again, maybe along the Gulf and over to California. Those folks, we would have to cold treat them and treat them as annuals, probably same as, I treat tulips in my area. So thank you guys for asking questions. You can ask them down below this video, and I'll be back next week with another question and answer video. Thanks again.